Ambassador Vel'kar adjusted his ceremonial scales one final time, their iridescent surface catching the harsh fluorescent lighting of Starport Prime's diplomatic bay. 3 centuries of intergalactic negotiations had taught him many things. First rule: never trust a species that smiles with their teeth. Second rule: always bring adequate protection when dealing with the Hegemony Council. "Sir, your companion has arrived," his aide Zimro announced with barely concealed distaste. Vel'kar's tentacles twitched with amusement. The young Drak'thari had lobbied extensively against hiring human protection, citing their reputation for excessive violence and questionable hygiene. "Send her in, Zimro, and do try to keep your prejudices to yourself." The airlock hissed open, and in walked the most unremarkable creature Vel'kar had ever laid his 6 eyes upon. Captain Maya Torres stood approximately 6 feet tall, which by galactic standards was laughably average. Her brown hair was pulled back in what humans called a ponytail, and her dark eyes surveyed the room with clinical efficiency. She wore a simple black suit that did absolutely nothing to hide the fact that she was armed to her back teeth. "Ambassador," Maya said, extending her hand in the peculiar human greeting ritual. "I'm Torres. I'll be keeping you breathing today." Vel'kar's translator unit struggled with the casual confidence in her voice. "Captain Torres, I must admit, when I requested human security, I expected someone larger." Maya's lips curved into what could generously be called a smile. "Size isn't everything, sir. Sometimes the best protection comes in unassuming packages. Besides, you didn't hire me for my looks." From across the room, Zimro snorted. "The Hegemony Council fields warriors who could crush starships with their bare appendages. What exactly do you plan to do if negotiations turn violent?" Maya turned her attention to the aide, and Vel'kar noticed something interesting. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Well, that depends entirely on how violent they want to get, doesn't it?" The journey to the Hegemony mothership took 6 hours through hyperspace. Vel'kar spent most of it reviewing diplomatic protocols while Maya sat motionless in her chair, eyes closed. To the untrained observer, she appeared to be sleeping. Vel'kar, however, had done his research on human physiology. Her breathing was too controlled, her posture too ready. She was a coiled spring, waiting. "Nervous?" he asked during the final approach. Maya opened one eye. "Should I be?" The Hegemony has never lost a territorial dispute in over 4,000 years. Their negotiation tactics are aggressive. Aggressive how? They tend to execute diplomats who displease them, publicly, with enthusiasm. Maya's other eye opened, and she fixed Vel'kar with a stare that made his scales itch. "And you thought bringing just one human was sufficient?" Before Vel'kar could respond, the ship shuddered as docking clamps engaged. Through the viewport, the Hegemony mothership stretched beyond visual range. It was less a vessel and more a mobile fortress, bristling with enough weaponry to sterilize small moons. The docking bay they entered could have housed Vel'kar's entire diplomatic fleet with room to spare. Hegemony soldiers lined the walls, their exoskeletons gleaming under harsh spotlights. Each stood nearly 12 feet tall and carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. "Cheerful bunch," Maya murmured, adjusting her jacket. "How many exits?" Vel'kar counted quickly. 14 visible, though I suspect several are sealed. Memen, the welcoming committee. At the far end of the bay, a delegation approached. Leading them was General Thaxmore, the Hegemony's chief military advisor. His chitinous armor bore the scars of 100 campaigns, and his mandibles clicked with barely restrained aggression. Behind him followed a retinue of equally intimidating warriors. The Ambassador Vel'kar. Thaxmore's voice boomed across the deck, each word dripping with false courtesy. How pleasant to see the Outer Rim Coalition finally sending someone with actual authority. Vel'kar's translator struggled with the subtle insults woven into the general's greeting. In Hegemony dialect, Thaxmore had essentially called him both incompetent and insignificant. Diplomatic protocol demanded a measured response. Maya apparently had different ideas about protocol. "General Thaxmore," she said, stepping slightly forward. "Lovely ship you have here. Compensating for something?" The silence that followed was deafening. Vel'kar's heart stopped beating for a full 3 seconds. Zimro made a sound like a deflating balloon. Even the Hegemony soldiers seemed confused by this tiny creature's audacity. Thaxmore's compound eyes focused on Maya with laser intensity. "And you are?" "Maya Torres, Captain, Human Defense Corps. I'm here to make sure negotiations proceed smoothly." The general's mandibles spread in what his species considered a threatening display. "One human? Against the might of the Hegemony? Your coalition has truly lost its collective mind." Maya tilted her head, studying the massive alien with academic interest. "You know, you're the third supposedly unstoppable military commander I've met this year." The other two said almost exactly the same thing. "And where are they now?" Thaxmore asked, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. Maya's smile returned, and this time it reached her eyes. "One's in a rehabilitation center learning to walk again. The other one's fertilizing a garden on New Terra. But hey, third time's the charm, right?" Vel'kar decided intervention was necessary before his bodyguard started an interstellar incident. "Perhaps we could proceed to the negotiation chamber. The matter of the Kepler mining rights requires urgent attention." Thaxmore's gaze lingered on Maya for another moment before he turned away. "Of course. Follow me, Ambassador. Try to keep your pet under control." The negotiation chamber was exactly what Vel'kar expected, imposing, militaristic, and designed to intimidate visiting diplomats into submission. The Hegemony delegation took their positions at a raised platform, literally looking down upon the coalition representatives. It was psychological warfare at its most obvious. Fleet Admiral Kexthul entered with appropriate ceremony, his massive form requiring 2 chairs to accommodate his bulk. His reputation preceded him, architect of the Andromedan conquest, butcher of the Tau Ceti rebels, and holder of more military decorations than some species had words for. Ambassador Vel'kar, the Admiral's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I trust you've come prepared to discuss the Coalition's surrender of mining rights in the Kepler system." Vel'kar's tentacles writhed with suppressed indignation. "Admiral, the Kepler system falls within Coalition space, according to the Galactic Accords of 2387. We're here to discuss your illegal mining operations." The Admiral's laugh was like grinding metal. "Illegal? The Hegemony recognizes no authority save strength. Your pathetic coalition lacks the military might to enforce your claims. The Galactic Council will hear of this," Zimro interjected, his voice cracking with outrage. "The Galactic Council," Admiral Kexthul said, leaning forward, "will do precisely nothing. They fear us as they should, as you should." Maya had remained silent throughout the exchange, but now she shifted in her chair. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but every Hegemony warrior in the room suddenly tensed. "Excuse me," Maya said, raising her hand like a student in class. "I hate to interrupt this fascinating display of interstellar bullying, but could someone explain to me exactly how many ships the Hegemony lost in their last 3 campaigns?" Admiral Kexthul's compound eyes narrowed. "Our losses are classified military information." "Oh, come on," Maya continued, her tone conversational. "It's just between friends, right? I mean, surely the mighty Hegemony doesn't mind sharing their glorious victories. Unless, oh wait, you didn't actually win those campaigns, did you?" The temperature in the room plummeted. General Thaxmore's hand moved to his sidearm, while the Admiral's breathing became audibly labored. "Human," the Admiral growled, "you test my patience." Maya leaned back in her chair, completely relaxed. "Your patience? That's cute. You know what tests my patience? Bullies who think size equals strength. Tigers who roar real loud, but fold the moment someone calls their bluff." Vel'kar watched in fascination as the Hegemony delegation's composure cracked. These were beings accustomed to fear and submission from their opponents. Maya's casual dismissal of their threats was more destabilizing than any military assault. "You dare mock the Hegemony?" Admiral Kexthal rose from his chairs, his bulk casting shadows across the negotiation table. Maya stood as well, and the size difference was almost comical. She barely reached the Admiral's midsection. "Mock? Oh no, Admiral. I'm just getting started." The human reached into her jacket, and every weapon in the room immediately targeted her. Energy rifles hummed to life, particle beams charged, and targeting systems locked on. Maya paused, hand halfway to whatever she was reaching for. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying easily across the chamber, "I'm going to reach into my jacket now and pull out a data pad. If anyone shoots me before I finish what I have to say, my government will consider it an act of war against humanity. And trust me when I tell you, you really don't want that." Admiral Kexthal gestured for his forces to hold fire, though their weapons remained trained on Maya. "Speak your piece, human. Make it quick." Maya withdrew a small device and activated it. A holographic display materialized above the negotiation table, showing star charts and fleet positions. 3 weeks ago, Maya began, the Hegemony 4th Fleet engaged human forces near the Proxima border. 12 Hegemony dreadnoughts against 3 human destroyers. Anyone want to guess how that ended? Silence. "No takers? Fine, I'll tell you. It took exactly 17 minutes for the human ships to disable your entire fleet. Not destroy, mind you, disable. We could have vaporized them, but we're not monsters." General Thaxmore's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated the human fleet was destroyed." Maya's smile widened. "Your intelligence reports were exactly what we wanted you to believe. See, humans learned a long time ago that the best way to win a war is to make your enemy think they're winning right up until the moment you crush them." She touched the data pad, and the display changed to show tactical recordings of the engagement. Vel'kar watched in stunned silence as 3 smaller ships systematically outmaneuvered and disabled the Hegemony fleet with surgical precision. "How?" Admiral Kexthal demanded. Maya shrugged. "Trade secret. But I can tell you this, every human ship in our fleet is equipped with technology your species hasn't even dreamed of yet. Every human soldier is trained to a standard that would make your best warriors weep. And every human diplomat." She paused, looking directly at the Admiral, "comes with a very specific message." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of electronics. "What message?" the Admiral asked, though his voice had lost much of its earlier confidence. Maya deactivated the hologram and tucked the datapad away. "Play nice, or we'll show you what humans do to bullies." The silence stretched on for long moments before Admiral Kexthal slowly sank back into his chairs. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Maya asked. "Tell you what, Admiral. Why don't you contact your 4th Fleet right now? Ask them how their ships are running. Ask them about the mysterious mechanical failures that started exactly 67 minutes ago." Thaxmore was already activating his communication device. The conversation that followed was brief and conducted in rapid Hegemony battle cant. When it ended, the General's face had shifted to a sickly green color. "The 4th Fleet reports technical difficulties," he admitted reluctantly. Maya nodded sagely. "Technical difficulties. That's one way to put it. Another way would be to say that every ship in your fleet is now running on backup power, their weapons are offline, and their navigation systems are displaying nothing but a message that reads, 'Have a nice day from your friends in humanity.'" Admiral Kexthal's breathing had become shallow. You sabotaged our fleet." "Sabotage is such an ugly word," Maya replied. "I prefer aggressive technical support. The good news is the effects are completely reversible. All it takes is a simple command code. The bad news is I'm the only one who has it." Vel'kar found his voice. "Captain Torres, perhaps you should explain the terms." Maya turned to the ambassador with mock surprise. Terms? Oh yes, the terms. They're quite simple, actually. She faced the Hegemony delegation again. The Kepler mining rights belong to the Coalition, as established by galactic law. Your forces will withdraw from Coalition space within 72 hours. In exchange, I'll restore your fleet to full operational status and we'll pretend this little misunderstanding never happened. And if we refuse? General Thaxmore asked. Maya's expression turned thoughtful. Well, losing one fleet is unfortunate. Losing your entire navy would be tragic. But that's your choice to make. Admiral Kexthal's compound eyes studied Maya with newfound respect and barely concealed terror. You would start a war over mining rights? Oh, Admiral, Maya laughed, and the sound sent chills down Vel'kar's spinal ridge. We wouldn't start a war, we'd end one. Very quickly. The Admiral looked to his advisors, then back at Maya. How do we know you'll honor your agreement? Maya reached into her jacket again, this time producing a small communication device. Because, unlike some species I could mention, humans actually keep their word. Watch. She spoke a series of numbers into the device. Moments later, Thaxmore's communicator chimed with an incoming message. Fourth Fleet reports all systems returning to normal operation, the General announced, his voice barely above a whisper. See? Maya said brightly. Humans, we're honest, efficient, and we get results. Also, we really don't like bullies. Admiral Kexthal sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. The Hegemony accepts your terms. Our forces will withdraw from the Kepler system. Maya clapped her hands together. Excellent. I do love it when negotiations end peacefully. Ambassador Vel'kar, shall we head home? As they prepared to leave, Admiral Kexthal called out one final question. Human, how many of your kind would it take to defeat the Hegemony in open war? Maya paused at the chamber entrance and looked back over her shoulder. Admiral, with respect, you're asking the wrong question. What's the right question? Maya's smile was absolutely terrifying. The right question is, why would we need more than one? The journey back to Coalition space passed in stunned silence. Zimro stared at Maya with something approaching religious awe, while Vel'kar found himself reassessing every assumption he'd ever made about human capabilities. As they entered hyperspace, Maya finally broke the silence. Not bad for a day's work, though I have to say your Hegemony friends are a bit more reasonable than I expected. Vel'kar's tentacles writhed with nervous energy. Captain Torres, may I ask you something? Shoot. How much of what you told them was actually true? Maya's grin was pure predator. Which part? Any of it? Maya settled back in her chair and closed her eyes. Ambassador, that's what I love about this job. Half the time, even I don't know where the truth ends and the bluff begins. But I'll tell you this much, the Hegemony will never know for sure either. And sometimes uncertainty is the most powerful weapon of all. Vel'kar pondered this as the stars streaked past. In 3 minutes of conversation, one human had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The implications were staggering. Captain Torres. Memem? Ma'am. Remind me never to get on humanity's bad side. Maya's laughter echoed through the ship as they headed home, leaving behind a very confused and thoroughly intimidated Hegemony fleet. Phase 1 of humanity's galactic debut was complete. 3 days after the Hegemony negotiations, Vel'kar's peaceful afternoon was shattered by emergency klaxons throughout the Coalition capital ship. His aide Zimro burst through the door, his normally pristine scales disheveled with panic. Sir, we have a problem. A big problem. Vel'kar set down his tea, a sinking feeling spreading through his multiple stomachs. Please tell me the Hegemony hasn't changed their minds about the withdrawal. Worse, sir, much worse. The Drak'thari Empire has issued a formal challenge to the Coalition. They're demanding we surrender Captain Torres to face trial for, and I quote, crimes against galactic stability. The ambassador's tentacles went rigid. The Drak'thari Empire made the Hegemony look like playground bullies. They were the oldest military power in the galaxy, with a reputation for turning entire star systems into asteroid fields when displeased. Where is Captain Torres now? Training Deck 7. She's been there since dawn, doing something she calls morning exercises. Vel'kar found Maya exactly where Zimro had indicated, moving through a series of fluid combat forms that seemed to defy several laws of physics. She flowed like water, struck like lightning, and somehow managed to look completely relaxed while demonstrating techniques that could probably level a small building. "Captain, we need to discuss your immediate future." Maya finished her routine and grabbed a towel. "Let me guess. Word got out about our little chat with the Hegemony, and now everyone wants to test the scary human. The Drak'thari Empire specifically. They've issued a formal challenge." Maya paused mid-wipe, and Vel'kar noticed her entire demeanor shift. Before she had been casually confident, now she radiated focused attention. "The Drak'thari? That's interesting. What kind of challenge?" "Single combat. You against their champion. Winner takes all." Maya's eyebrows rose. "Takes all what?" "If you lose, the coalition surrenders all territorial claims in 3 sectors and provides the Empire with tribute for the next century." "If you win," Vel'kar's voice trailed off. "If I win?" "The Empire acknowledges human sovereignty and agrees to mutual non-interference treaties. It's an unprecedented offer." Maya considered this while toweling off her hair. "So, no pressure then. Who's their champion?" Zimro consulted his data pad with trembling claws. "War Master Drak'thari the Undefeated. He's won over 300 single combat challenges. His last opponent was literally torn in half." "Literally?" "Very literally. There were pieces." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Well, that does sound unpleasant. When and where?" Vel'kar's hearts nearly stopped. "Captain, surely you're not considering accepting." "The coalition would never ask you to." "Ambassador," Maya interrupted gently, "with respect, this isn't the coalition's choice to make. It's mine." "When and where?" "Tomorrow. Neutral space, aboard the arbitration station Nexus Prime. The combat will be broadcast across 17 different galactic networks." Maya grinned, and Vel'kar was reminded uncomfortably of a predator scenting wounded prey. 17 networks. That's quite an audience. I hope they're expecting a show. The journey to Nexus Prime took 18 hours. Vel'kar spent most of it trying to talk Maya out of what he considered elaborate suicide, while she spent it reviewing tactical data on her opponent with disturbing enthusiasm. War Master Drak'thari, she read from her data pad. Height 12 feet 4 inches. Weight approximately 800 pounds. Armored exoskeleton, redundant organ systems, regenerative capabilities. Weapons training in 47 different combat disciplines. "Captain, these statistics should be terrifying you." Maya looked up from her reading. "Should they? I mean, he's big, he's tough, and he's experienced. But you know what I don't see in this file?" "What?" "Any record of him fighting humans. See, that's the thing about being undefeated. It makes you predictable. You start believing your own press releases." Zimro, who had remained silent for most of the journey, finally spoke. "Captain Torres, forgive my directness, but War Master Drak'thari has literally never lost a battle. Ever. In 4 centuries of warfare." Maya set down the data pad and fixed the aide with a patient stare. "Zimro, let me ask you something. How many humans has the War Master fought?" "Well, none but." "And how many species in this galaxy have faced humans in single combat?" I don't know." "The answer is 0. Want to know why?" "Because until 3 days ago, nobody took us seriously enough to bother. We were the new kids, the small fish, the species that everybody ignored." Maya's smile turned sharp. "Turns out that was their first mistake. Nexus Prime was a marvel of neutral engineering, designed specifically to host interspecies negotiations and formal challenges. The combat arena occupied the station's central hub, surrounded by observation decks that could accommodate delegates from hundreds of different worlds. As they approached the arena, Vel'kar was struck by the sheer number of representatives present. It seemed like half the galaxy had shown up to watch this spectacle. A popular event, Maya observed, adjusting the simple black combat suit she had chosen over any armor. "Captain, it's not too late to reconsider. The Coalition would understand." "Ambassador, with all due respect, shut up. I'm trying to concentrate." The arena itself was a circular platform roughly 100 meters in diameter, surrounded by energy barriers to protect spectators from stray weapons fire. Combat rules were simple: no outside assistance, no weapons beyond what each combatant brought personally, and the fight continued until one participant yielded or died. War Master Drak'thari entered from the opposite side of the arena, and Vel'kar's breath caught in his throat. The Drak'thari warrior was even more imposing in person. His chitinous armor gleamed like polished obsidian, and the various weapons integrated into his exoskeleton hummed with barely contained energy. His 6 limbs moved with predatory grace, and his compound eyes tracked Maya's every movement with mechanical precision. Human, his voice boomed across the arena, amplified by the station's communication systems. "I am War Master Drak'thari of the Drak'thari Empire. In 400 years of combat, I have never known defeat. Today you will learn why." Maya stepped onto the platform wearing nothing but her combat suit and carrying what appeared to be an empty equipment harness. The size difference was even more dramatic than it had been with the Hegemony delegation. "War Master Drak'thari," Maya replied, her voice carrying clearly despite the arena's vast size. "I'm Maya Torres, and I'm here to teach you something new." The arena fell silent. 17 different galactic networks focused their cameras on the 2 combatants. Vel'kar found himself holding his breath. "Begin," announced the neutral arbiter. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. War Master Drak'thari moved with the fluid speed of a born killer, his combat experience evident in every motion. Multiple weapon systems activated simultaneously: plasma cannons, kinetic accelerators, and molecular disruption fields. The air around Maya erupted in destructive energy. When the light faded, she was gone. Drak'thari spun in place, scanning for his opponent, but the human had simply vanished. The arena's sensor systems registered no life signs, no heat signature, nothing. "Impossible," the War Master growled. "Show yourself, coward." Maya's voice echoed from the arena's speakers, but her location remained a mystery. "You know, Drak'thari, you have an impressive reputation. 400 years undefeated. That's quite an accomplishment." The Drak'thari warrior fired blindly in multiple directions, his frustration evident. "Face me." "Oh, I am facing you. You're just not looking in the right place." "See, that's the problem with being undefeated for so long. You start making assumptions, like assuming your opponent will fight the same way everyone else has." Suddenly, Maya materialized directly behind Drak'thari, moving like a shadow given form. Before the War Master could react, she had scaled his armored back and was working at something near his neck joint. "What are you doing?" Drak'thari roared, spinning and clawing at the air behind him. "Technical support," Maya replied cheerfully, then vanished again as the War Master's claws swept through empty space. For the next several minutes, the pattern repeated. Maya would appear, make some adjustment to Drak'thari's armor or weapons, then disappear before he could respond. Each time, another of his systems would malfunction or shut down entirely. "This is not combat," Drak'thari bellowed. "This is trickery." Maya's voice carried a note of mock offense. "Trickery? I prefer to call it applied ingenuity. Besides, you never specified what kind of combat this would be." The War Master's plasma cannons sputtered and died. His kinetic accelerators jammed. His targeting systems began displaying error messages in what appeared to be ancient human text. "Impossible. My armor is impenetrable. My weapons are state-of-the-art. were state-of-the-art, Maya corrected, appearing briefly on his left flank before vanishing again. About 200 years ago, humans have this wonderful habit of studying our opponents before we fight them. Every piece of Drak'thari technology, every weapon system, every armor configuration. We've had people working on counters for decades. Drak'thari's remaining weapons systems began shutting down one by one. His mighty armor, the pride of Drak'thari engineering, was becoming nothing more than an elaborate prison. You cannot defeat the Empire with parlor tricks. Maya materialized directly in front of him, finally visible and apparently within reach. Drak'thari lunged forward with all his remaining strength, claws extended to tear the human apart. Maya sidestepped the attack with casual ease, and the War Master's momentum carried him past her. As he stumbled, she reached out and touched a final control point on his back. Drak'thari's armor locked up completely. Servos seized, joints froze, and weapon systems died. The mighty War Master found himself trapped inside his own equipment, unable to move so much as a finger. And that, Maya announced to the stunned arena, is why you should never trust technology you don't understand. The silence was deafening. 17 galactic networks broadcast the image of the supposedly invincible War Master Drak'thari being frozen like a statue in the center of the arena, while a human woman, roughly 1/6 his size, stood calmly beside him. "Do you yield?" Maya asked politely. From within his armor prison, Drak'thari's voice was barely a whisper. "How?" Maya patted his armored shoulder almost affectionately. "Trade secret. But I'll give you a hint, humans didn't become the dominant species on our world by being the biggest or the strongest. We did it by being smarter, more adaptable, and more creative than everything that wanted to eat us. 400 years of victories made you predictable, War Master, and predictable opponents are easy to defeat. I yield." The arena erupted. Delegates from hundreds of species rose to their feet, some cheering, others simply staring in shock. The mighty Drak'thari Empire, whose champions had been undefeated for millennia, had just been humbled by a single human. Maya activated a device on her equipment harness, and Drak'thari's armor systems came back online. The War Master flexed his limbs experimentally, testing his restored mobility. "You could have killed me," he said quietly. "I could have," Maya agreed. "But where's the fun in that? Besides, dead opponents don't learn lessons. Live ones get to go home and tell everyone about their educational experience." Later, as they prepared to depart Nexus Prime, Vel'kar found himself struggling to process what he had witnessed. "Captain Torres, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long have humans been planning this?" Maya paused in her equipment check. "Planning what specifically?" "This introduction to galactic society. The hegemony, the Drak'thari, everything." Maya's smile was enigmatic. "Ambassador, humans have a saying, plan for the best, prepare for the worst, and be ready to improvise when both plans fall apart. We've been watching the galaxy for a long time, learning, studying, preparing. But honestly, most of what you've seen these past few days was pure improvisation." "Improvisation? You mean you were making it up as you went along?" "The best plans always leave room for creativity. Besides, rigid thinking is what makes opponents predictable. And predictable opponents are easy to defeat," Vel'kar finished. "I'm beginning to understand." As their ship departed Nexus Prime, news of the human victory was already spreading across the galaxy at faster than light speeds. The political implications were staggering. 2 of the galaxy's most powerful military forces had been neutralized without firing a shot. "So what happens now?" Zimro asked as they entered hyperspace. Maya settled into her chair and closed her eyes. Now the real work begins. Today was just an introduction. Tomorrow we start building something better. Better than what? Better than a galaxy ruled by fear and intimidation. Better than empires built on conquest and domination. Better than a universe where might makes right. Vel'kar's tentacles writhed thoughtfully. "And you believe humans can create this better galaxy?" Maya opened one eye and fixed him with a steady gaze. Not alone, but with allies like the Coalition. With species willing to choose cooperation over conquest. Maybe. Just maybe. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address what historians would later call the human question. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss this new species that had seemingly appeared from nowhere and defeated 2 major powers in the span of a single week. Vel'kar found himself appointed as the Coalition's primary liaison to humanity, a position that came with both tremendous honor and considerable stress. Maya, meanwhile, had been promoted to Director of Human Diplomatic Security, a job title she had apparently invented herself. Any regrets? Vel'kar asked as they prepared for yet another round of negotiations. Maya considered the question seriously. Just one. I wish we'd introduced ourselves sooner. Think of all the problems we could have solved, all the wars we could have prevented. And why didn't you? It's because we weren't ready. Humanity spent centuries learning to live with itself before we felt qualified to help others do the same. Turns out that preparation time was worth it. As they entered the council chambers, Vel'kar reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. The galaxy's power structure had been fundamentally altered, not through conquest or destruction, but through demonstration. Humanity had proven that intelligence and creativity could triumph over brute force and intimidation. Ready for another day of aggressive diplomacy? Maya asked cheerfully. Vel'kar's laugh was genuine for the first time in decades, with you as humanity's representative. I think the galaxy had better be ready for us. The Galactic Council session that followed would establish humanity as a major player in interstellar politics. But more importantly, it would mark the beginning of a new era where problems were solved through innovation rather than intimidation, where conflicts were resolved through cleverness rather than carnage. And it all started because one diplomat decided to bring a human bodyguard to what should have been a simple negotiation. The war that never was had ended before it began, not with weapons or bloodshed, but with something far more powerful. The realization that the most dangerous opponent is the one who refuses to play by your rules. Maya Torres had shown the galaxy that humans didn't need to be the biggest or the strongest to be the most effective. Sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. As the session began and delegates from hundreds of worlds took their seats, one thought echoed through Vel'kar's mind: the galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in his long diplomatic career, he was genuinely excited to see what happened next.